Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. Happy Friday. I know it was a short week. You probably have a hard time getting back into it this week. At least I know I did. I want to just say thanks for watching Foresight TV. I'm so glad you were here for this broadcast. I've known Dan for a million years, practically since I've been in the industry. He's one of the most amazing leaders who really knows the industry well. This is going to be an amazing conversation. We would love to hear from you and about what you're doing to improve the lives of residents and team members in your organization, and just to learn how we can serve you better as a thought leadership platform. In addition to Foresight TV, we have just a bunch of other content. We've got LinkedIn posts and the Foresight podcast. We've got Tech Tuesday, Marketing Monday, Workforce Wednesday. And of course, our website, we publish fresh content every day, 5 days a week. And we would love to have you subscribe. The QR code is up on the screen, so you can scan it. We also have a link in the comments if you want to take a look at that. And then the last thing I just want to make mention of is that we announced this past week that we are launching the first ever event that is focused on AI in senior living. We're calling it the Foresight AI Lab. It's going to happen in Las Vegas the third week in January. And this will not be like anything else you've attended. You will actually walk away with the tools you need to go deeper in AI in your organization, or to get started on your AI journey if you haven't started down that. And with that, on to today's episode. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. So I'm sort of laughing here, Dan. Usually I push the intro button to start the video running. Jada never knows whether I'm going to do it or not. And a couple times I've forgotten. And so I started it, and then she pushed the button to start it, which stopped it. And then we were on. And so she just shakes her head behind the scenes and says, "What kind of a boss am I working for?" Dan, I've never had you on Foresight TV before, and that's a bad on my part. Let's start with a little bit about who you are, your history in the industry, and Human Good.
Well, thanks for having me, Steve. It's again, we've known each other for a very long time. I don't want to count the years, but it's been quite some time since we've first got acquainted. But yeah, I've been in the industry. It's getting close to 30 years now. I've been with Human Good, which started out as I started out with Southern California Presbyterian Homes in 1995. And over time, we went from SCPH, then we became B Group when John Cochran joined us about 16 years ago. And then when we did the affiliation with American Baptist Homes of the West, or ABHA, we became B Group. And since then, we've also grown both in the affordable housing portfolio and in our life plan portfolio. 23 communities that are essentially life plan communities throughout the country, and just over 100 affordable housing communities with several under development, most of which are owned and managed by us, and a handful of them are just managed by us. Start out in dining, and I've just pretty much done everything else that you could do in senior living, and ended up in the COO position about 17 years ago or so, and just have loved every minute of it. Have a great partner in John Cochran, our CEO, really good complementary skill sets. So, he doesn't want to do what I do, and I certainly don't want to do what he does. So we have a great relationship.
Yeah. So what did you start out doing in dining services? I don't think I actually knew that.
I was working for a university here in San Diego, and the person I worked for I was in dining, and he oversaw dining, housing, and retail operations bookstore. And he told me, he goes, "Dan, you're a real ambitious guy, but just so you know, I'm planning on retiring in this job." And he was in his early 40s, and true to his word, he stayed till he was 65 years old. I had a friend who was the director of dining at our life plan community in La Jolla, the White Sands of La Jolla, and he was leaving to move to Texas. So I went and applied for a job that I was planning on keeping for a year. I could ride my bike to work. And, almost 30 years later, I took a job and fell in love with an industry and an organization.
Cool. So you've given us kind of an overview of Human Good, and you've had a lot of growth through affiliation. Do you see Human Good continuing to grow, and will that be mostly through affiliation? I know John, you and I haven't talked so much about this, but I know John sort of feels like the day of the freestanding CCRC, single site not-for-profit is on the decline. I'm not so sure I agree with that, by the way, but I'm just sort of curious about what the future plan is for Human Good.
Yeah, John feels very strongly about consolidation in the industry, as do I. I think there are some really strong single sites out there. There'll continue to be strong single sites, but a lot of them, the complexity of our industry has grown so much over the last couple of decades. And people we're serving now in skilled nursing where people are serving now in assisted living, where people we were serving in skilled nursing when I first started. We have many more complex residents. People are living so much longer. We're serving people that from the youngest to the oldest could be 35 or 40 years. I mean, that's several generations of humanity. And so consolidation is important. One is a lot of folks just can't survive on their own financially. But if you're putting that aside, for us to be able to have the resources we have, we have a very strong in-house legal department. This afternoon, I'm interviewing another staff attorney. So we're able to have our own compliance, our own risk, our own legal. We have a super strong corporate clinical team that we wouldn't be able to have. And also when it comes to technology, we really believe in technology. And that, you need to be strong in technology as you grow. And so we've really built a strong IT and technology organization. Actually, I was mentioning to you before the meeting started, that before the show started, that our chief technology officer, Nick Lindberg, he's an AI guy. And in the past, we've had people who are really strong in IT, strong with computers, strong with a lot of other things. But we're really growing out of that and into more of an AI world because that's the world we live in.
Yeah, I think we are so early on the AI journey, as is everybody in every industry. But as we were talking earlier, I'll sort of dig into this technology side, and I'll circle back to leadership again here in a minute, which is where I was going to go next. Is that we as we were talking before, we sort of saw robots as being this big, not total answer, but a big answer to the labor. And so far, we haven't really seen that happen. But as I've been working on speakers for this AI event and talking to operators, and it's like each one has got something different that they've done that is just, it's mind-boggling what they're doing. And so as this all starts to coalesce into a complete system or integrated system, it is going to be remarkable. So I'm anxious to talk to Nick about that. What can you give us any hints about what you're doing with AI now?
I'm not gonna do too many spoiler alerts. That's really you need to get Nick on with that. I mean, we're using things like ChatGPT. We're using AI in really helping us predict. There's so many tools out there that can help us predict things like falls. And using AI and fall technology, falls are a huge issue for us. And looking at all the different falls technologies out there, but also using the ones that continue to get smarter and learn as we go along, so we can track, when people are falling, when people are getting up and going to the bathroom, what is causing our falls? Is it certain timeframes? Is it around certain medications? And that research is complex, but with AI, we just keep narrowing it down to make it better and safer for our residents. And not just for fall technology, we're trying to figure it out with all sorts of technologies, looking at behaviors around food. What are the foods that are most consumed by the different groups on our campuses? So we're buying the right amount, but we're not buying too much, but we're certainly not buying too little. There's a lot of tools that are available out there, and having a active innovation team, and back to size matters when it comes to, we have we're building out an innovation center, and we're building out an innovation team under Nick, where we're looking to grow innovation in this organization and to be an innovative organization. It's one of the pillars of Human Good.
Great. So we've actually got a comment here. I'm not sure I want to go into specific platforms right now, but I know that fall reduction is one of the areas that there are a lot of people who are looking at and experimenting with. And I think from my perspective, the big challenge is how do you actually what's the best sensor technology, and then what's the best software or AI behind that that'll give you the most data, right?
Yeah, I think it's that. And again, not talking about specific platforms, but there's a couple that are the big ones that, everybody's aware of. But there's also being able to look at the data, to be able to see one, how we can prevent the fall. So looking at the data, looking at the fall activity to be able to say, okay, now what can we do so that doesn't happen again? But then also there's a whole other side to it, to making sure what's in the medical record. What do plaintiffs' attorneys have access to? What does our regulators have access to? Because, also our biggest point of litigation comes around fall. So we're trying to find that balance, but knowing is better than not knowing. And, there are no pretty falls. So when you look at a fall on film, it's, on video, it just doesn't look good. No falls look good. And
Yeah.
but to really understand how it happened and why it happened and how we can staff appropriately, but making sure we're meeting people's needs around preventing falls. And falls is what the main thing that changes the level of care. You're in assisted living, you have a fall, you tend to end up in skilled nursing. If you're in independent living, falls are devastating, particularly if there's a surgery that follows them. So the technologies are there and they're real, and it's really about finding the ones that have the best sensors, but also the best use of AI to help you get better all along, honing in. That's what I love about AI, is the ability to kind of hone in on areas of challenge so that you can really document better performance.
Yeah, I think the fall thing is, so first thing is that it's such a vexing problem for senior living, right? Because we actually know we could get to the point where we had zero falls if we tied everybody into beds and wheelchairs, right? We just never let them stand up, but the quality of life would be so down. And so there's some risk with that. And somehow maybe we haven't communicated that balance as we talk to residents and their families. I don't know, probably a different conversation to have. But I do think that beyond just sort of what happens in the immediate area where the sensor technology comes in, the bigger question is what else is going on? Is there diet stuff that needs to be factoring in? Is there life enrichment, physical activity stuff that needs to be tied in? Is there emotional stuff? And that's where AI just becomes so exciting, because you start to identify these things, these non-obvious opportunities to make it better. So
Absolutely. And you see things like that people struggle with, like hydration is such a key thing. If
yeah,
people maintain hydration, so many different things won't occur if you're negative things, if people are hydrated. But how do you measure that? And how do you monitor that? And how do you make sure people are staying hydrated? Adequate nutrition, like you said, if you don't eat, particularly if you're taking medications, there are a lot of things that can occur. So it really is, it's not just about a fall. It's about so many other things that play into it. And those technologies help, but they only help if you're looking at all the other factors that are surrounding it.
Yeah, so I was talking, exactly right. I was talking to an operator who's doing some really interesting stuff with AI, and it wasn't specifically about fall, but he was telling me that they collect something. I think he told me 100,000, sort of typically 120,000 data points a year from each resident. And, you can't use a dashboard. No matter how sophisticated your dashboard is to do averages, it will never really give you the picture you need that something like AI does. So anyway, I feel like I'm just doing an AI commercial for our conference here. So I appreciate that, Dan. I want to come back to sort of your leadership philosophy, and particularly I'm interested in the human capital equation. As you know, the industry has this massive turnover. How are you approaching your teams to make them love coming to work every day?
It's a good question. We've focused on, with Human Good, one of the things that I think we do better than a lot is that if we focus, it gets done. Whatever we measure, we accomplish, generally speaking. And we've really worked on turnover, and because turnover is it's very expensive. It's bad for our culture and the services we provide to our residents because, there's this, institutional knowledge matters. So when you have people, you need people who've been around for a while, and there's always going to be some turn. But, one of the things, there's a book by uh, uh, Reed Hastings, the guy who founded Netflix, and the book's called No Rules Rules. And John Cochran, he suggested that I read it. It's a fascinating book. It's totally different business than the business that we're in at Human Good, but his leadership philosophy I loved. And one of them is, if someone's unhappy at Human Good, we try to work it out to make them happy. But if they're not, we will help them find placement somewhere else. We don't want people to stay, because if you're not happy and you're not satisfied in your work life, it's really hard to be productive. And we've proven that over and over again. And the other thing that I love that came from that particular book was the no jerks rule. And we have a no jerks rule, meaning you've got to be good at what you do to work with us, but you can't be a jerk. And you can be the best of the best from a technical skill perspective. But if you're a jerk, you can't work with us, because we are in a service business. We're in a kindness business. And I tell people when I hire them, never mistake my kindness for weakness, because I try to always be nice. You've known me a long time. You know, I don't rant and rave. I'm not really a temperamental guy, but we all have our days. But I believe in treating people the way I want to be treated. And so we have pretty simple beliefs, but they're strong. And one of them is treat people how you want to be treated. And, John pretty well. John's a good guy, and, he's my boss. So I'm not saying that because he's my boss, but he's just a good guy. And I think I'm a good guy. And the people that work on our team are solid people who really care about what they do, but they're all very smart and they're good at their roles, but they're not jerks. And, in some companies, there's just people who are they operate that way and they think it's okay. And, I come into a community, I'm in one of our communities right now, and I try to go in and say hello to every single person that I can get a hold of who works here. Yeah. And it takes me 10, 15 minutes. I walk through really quick, and because I want people to feel welcomed and I want people to feel comfortable. But we also try to make sure that we do comp studies every year. You've got to pay people fairly. People need to support their family. So you can't, and we have to pay what the market requires. And we operate in a lot of different markets. Southern California is very, very expensive. Eastern Washington's a little less expensive, but we have to meet those markets. And so we try to be around the 75th or the 80th percentile in every position that we have in the organization. John's a strong believer, particularly from the kind of the administrator, executive director up, in pay for performance. So, often we'll have people come to Human Good and say, well, I expected a higher salary and a lower bonus. And we say, you'll make more working here, but you've got to perform. And that's a little bit more of a for-profit attitude. Sometimes people see it as, but once people come and work here, we focus on our corporate goals together, and everybody has individual goals, but we have top line goals, we have midline goals, but they all meld together. And we use technology, whether it's one of the AI tools or Smartsheet, to be able to make sure that we're tracking them. But everything cascades down to and up to each other. So, whether it's an occupancy goal, whether it's a quality goal, whether it's a resident satisfaction or a team member satisfaction, and all those things measure. So we have our financial goals, which threshold us in to our incentive plan, but it's not all about financial performance. Like for this year, resident satisfaction and team member satisfaction, very, very important to us. We focus on net promoter scores with the residents. Would you recommend? And we've shot up this year. We shot up significantly, but we work at it. We make sure that we have a corporate residents council. So we have resident leadership from all over the organization who meet together, meet with leadership, and we make sure that we have an ongoing dialogue. And with the team members as well. John goes out and we do these listening tours. He does them, and then I fill in behind him, which is going out and just listening to team members, not going out and speaking to them or at them, going out and listening, hearing what their concerns are. And some of their concerns are, obviously there's wage concerns or there's benefits concerns. Some of there's parking concerns. Some of our communities, we just don't have enough parking. And so it's hard for people to get to work and have to spend 30 minutes trying to find a parking spot. Those kind of things matter. We've heard team members say, I want to be able to grow and become educated. So we fund at any given time, we have, 50, 60, 70 people either working towards bachelor's degrees or graduate degrees, people who want to become CNAs or CNAs who want to become LVNs or LPNs, LVNs or LPNs who want to become RNs. And we support that. We fundraise for it, but we also support it out of corporate funds because we think it's important. And we hope that they stay, but if they don't and they go somewhere else, it's still a compliment to us when people want to poach our team members, which happens often, but it's a compliment. But we have great tenure and we've reduced our turnover, 6-7% over the last couple of years. So we've continued to do really, really well in that area.
That's cool. Let me ask you a couple of questions on both of you. You've got talked about so much stuff, and I've got this sort of list, part of them written down, part of them in my head. Let's start with with what you've done to raise your net promoter score. Are there any specific things that you've done that just you look back and say, "Oh, we were brilliant for having done that"?
I'm not sure of brilliance. I guess others might consider it brilliance, but I would say that what we've done is we've made a very serious effort to listen to our residents and to include our residents. Now, we can't take everything out to a vote. That doesn't make sense. Right. But key hires, we put together resident groups so they get an opportunity to meet and interview, but we're not asking for a vote. But around decisions of their environment, we put together resident committees because we want them to have choice in things that we choose. We want them to have choice in menus that we offer. We just hired, even though we're mostly contracted for dining services, but we have a bunch of self-op, but we just recently hired a vice president of hospitality, not just for dining, but also for guest rooms and front desk. But we purposely brought in somebody who's not from this industry. He's from the hotel industry and the restaurant industry. He's been in both. And he's just going to be a great addition because we believe that resident experience matters. And we have a whole resident experience department. And that's, again, one of those areas where size matters. So, the corporate residence council and the resident liaison team is really has worked to make sure that we have a good cross section of residents from throughout our portfolio. And we listen to what they say. And they know we listen to what we say. And we try to affect change based on what they say, but not what individuals say, but what the group is saying and what we're hearing from the residents at every specific community and what matters to them. We want our residents to feel safe, and if they don't feel safe, we want to know why they don't feel safe. And we work to make them feel safe. And it really has made a difference. I mean, our net promoter score is, up in the Southwest Airlines, Apple stratosphere.
Yeah, that's cool.
And where but we've worked very hard but we're continuing to push it because, our best referral source is our residents. And if our residents aren't going to say that they're willing to recommend their friends or family to move in, that's a problem. And we have great marketing, and we do most of our marketing is inbound marketing. We do we have a great team who does, so much of it's web-based as it has to be, but so much of it is referral. And our best referrers are our residents. And so we love hearing when we have an appointment for a tour that, I was recommended by the Joneses who've been living here for the last 2 years. And that's how it is. And interestingly enough, my parents moved into a senior living community, not a Human Good community. And they moved in late. I mean, they're 90 and 92. In Florida, but the place they chose to go to was a place that many of their friends live in and were happy. And so they looked at a bunch of places, but they ended up at the first place they looked at because that's where they had the most friends who recommended it to them. And so they had to wait till a unit came available for them. So it took them 6 months or so to get in, but it was so fantastic because that's what sold them. I did the behind the scenes checking, but they were sold by their friends. They weren't sold by the salespeople. They weren't sold by anybody who really worked in the community. They were sold by the residents who were there.
Yeah, I think there's so much that we miss in this whole how we tell our story marketing. I early on when I started Senior Living Foresight, I'd go out every week and tour a community and write about it. And honestly, way more than 50% were pretty miserable experiences. They were embarrassing to me as somebody who loves the industry. The best tour I've ever had, and not quite a family resident, but the same kind of thing, but the best tour I've ever had was in a Sunrise building here in the Sacramento area where I live. And the tour was given to me by the on-duty manager who was the maintenance director. And I will tell you, she didn't have good grammar. Her English wasn't very good. She was in jeans and a work shirt with her name tag on it. But you know what? She loved the residents and the residents loved her. And we walked through this building and it took us like 45 minutes to do a 15-minute tour because she had to stop and hug and have conversations, not just with the residents, but family members. And she knew everybody. And so you create that kind of an environment and you don't have trouble staying full. So I absolutely love that. We've only got about 4 minutes left. I got one question I got to ask you about. There's a lot of talk about the emerging baby boomer generation. You're probably not quite. Are you a boomer? You're probably not a boomer, are you? I'm a boomer. I'm right in the smack dab.
I'm close, but I'm not there.
You're not a boomer. You're too young. But I'm right in the middle of the boomer generation. There's a lot of talk about how they're going to want something very different in senior living than the silent generation, past generations. Do you have thoughts on that? And what are you guys seeing?
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts on it. I will tell you that first of all, the boomers are demanding and they should be. And we've had other generations, when I first started in this industry, coming from a dining perspective, a lot of the places that I visited, even within our own organization, I was embarrassed at the time. I was embarrassed by what we served. And we'd have communities where the residents were so thankful to get what I would consider a crummy meal. Now that's changed because they won't accept it anymore. Yeah. They shouldn't. And we're seeing now at our communities, if we don't have strong wireless and really good fiber access for IT services for the residents, I'm not talking about for the business, I'm talking about for the residents, they're not moving in. If residents can't, we have communities that we're changing them over time where, things buffer, right? They still buffer and they spin and they spin and they spin. Well, people want to watch Netflix and they want to watch Hulu and they want that access. And it's non-negotiable. It's not, and probably when you were a kid and I was a kid, I didn't know anybody who had a peanut allergy. And I mean this with all due respect with folks who have allergies, but it's something that's evolved over time. And we have more and more people who are, for example, either celiac or gluten intolerant that are moving in. We have more vegans and vegetarians that are moving in. All those kind of things we have to accommodate, where in the past we said, well, we just don't do that. But now people want what they want. And so the challenge is to be able to serve a newer generation with older generations kind of mixed together on the same campus. But the demands are different and people want to charge electric cars. There are a lot of electric cars around here and people don't want to go to a Tesla station. They want to be able to charge it in their parking space. All those kind of things, you can wait and just see what happens, or you need to get in front of it. And, people want to do things like Pilates and not do, chair exercises. And people will always do chair exercises, but there are people who want to be able to do things like Pilates and Tai Chi. And, but it's around the environment, it's around the food, it's around the programming. And there also is, it's a topic for another day, but also the need for inclusiveness and DEI, because, it used to be that it was the same Protestant, Catholic, Jewish couple that moved in. They've been married for 100 years. That's all changed now. People are on second marriages. We have third marriages. We have a lot of same-sex couples. We have interracial people, and it's changed. And so we have to be able to accommodate everybody, and everything's not for everybody, but you need to be able to meet the needs of the people who are coming through the door. And in the past, we would say, this is the way it is. You get one choice. And now they won't tolerate that. So if you want to stay in business, you've got to be able to roll with the times.
So as I look at senior living, and I'm certainly at an age where I qualify to move in. I'm not quite ready to make that move yet. But here's my single biggest complaint, frustration. And I apologize, I know I'm going to offend some people. I I don't want to just go live with a bunch of other old people. I really want to be in a place that's more intergenerational. And I know there are a few senior living campuses that are on college campuses, university campuses that sort of solves that problem. Do you see any plans forward? Do you guys, is this something you're thinking about? I mean, do you ever see a way where we somehow integrate, with senior living with families that we can, it looks more like real life?
Yeah, it's an ongoing conversation because people want, again, you have to meet the needs. You have to meet people where they are and where they want to be, like what you just said. So unless you have a needs-based admission somewhere, you're going to go a place that has the energy that you want it to have. And so
Yeah.
those places are going to continue to be looked at and developed. And we're looking at all sorts of opportunities to be able to do that. And there are some who've kind of built a community attached to a Y or a JCC or one of those things, and they've had some success, but not a ton of success. And so you've got to be able to, particularly in an urban setting, you've got to be able to meet those needs. Where I am today is in Irvine, and we're right across from University of California, Irvine. And so we try to do as many programs together, which we have a program to move in professors from the university as well, and then have active programs within the community that bring in people of all ages and not just focus on one generation, because our population isn't one generation anymore. We have multi-generations just living in the community. We've had situations where we've had an adult parent and a child, a parent. We've had several situations where mom has lived here and the daughters lived here at our communities. Mom's 85 and daughter's 65. But we do need to look at all those opportunities, and we really need to understand the markets. And that's why technology is so good, because you can draw in all this data, because once you make that decision to construct that building, then you're kind of stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I just think we're in such an exciting time. With the boomers are certainly helping to fill buildings. I think the last NIC data report suggested that occupancy is about as high as it's ever been. And with so little new construction going on, I think that we will continue to see that. I would also say that I'd be curious about your thoughts on it. I think one of the things that seems to be very different post-pandemic as we come out of it and as people's occupancy is going up, that we see a bigger bifurcation. So we've got some organizations that are really just crushing with high occupancy and high margin. And we see some organizations that are really continue to struggle that seem to have not made the transition. Are you seeing the same? And I see that more in the for-profit world than the not-for-profit. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, and we see it all the time, Steve. It's people are unwilling to change, and John's really been a great visionary for us, and we've had to change. And some of the things I'm like, are you nuts? And he's, but we've got to try the different things, because if you look at the communities are stale, they're the ones who last to fill. And if there's these needs do exist, and sometimes there's nowhere else someone to go. So they'll end up going to to your grandma's retirement community, because that's the only place to go. But if you really want to market to the contemporary senior, you've got to be able to meet their needs. And it's always interesting to me. And within their units, you need to be able to meet their needs. People need appropriate space. People need appropriate closet space. They need appropriate parking, and they need to have all of their needs met. I'm not talking about just their healthcare needs. I'm talking about their hospitality needs. We put a bar in pretty much every community, and we're working to have a bar because people want to be able to have a drink. That doesn't mean everybody drinks, but a lot of our people like to drink, and they want to be able to have a cocktail before dinner or after dinner. And so we make sure, because that's what they asked us for. And we want to make sure that we're focused on those things, and we're focusing on the needs of the residents. And we're making sure also that from a spiritual and a social services perspective, that was one of the things that people kind of pulled back from, because it was a way to save money. But we realized that it's not about being of single denomination, but people want access to religion and to spirituality. It's not just religion, but they want to have access to spirituality. So we make sure that we have that access. It's not any specific denomination, but we have a means in which we coordinate to make sure everybody's needs are being met. And then, we learned in the pandemic is that, you need to have that psychosocial strength to be able to meet the needs of residents as they're going through tough times, particularly isolation. So you take people who may already be suffering from some isolation or loneliness, and then a pandemic comes around, it takes a long time to recover from that. So we've been really super focused on that, and we're going to continue to do that.
Yeah, I think, ultimately the big value of senior living really is that social component, the community component, right? All that other stuff may cost you a lot of money. You can get it at home, but you can get it at home. That interpersonal stuff you just can't get at home, and so that's huge. Dan, this has been an amazing conversation. We are way out of time. I got about 8 more questions I want to ask you. I guess we'll have to do this again. I really appreciate it a lot. Hang on for just a couple minutes after where I do want to I don't normally do this, but I want to give a plug for next week. I have the Karen Schulte, who leads SCAN, which is the largest Medicare Advantage program in the nation, as my guest next week. Senior living has this massive opportunity to partner with healthcare plans and healthcare systems. We would save the nation billions of dollars a year if we can figure out how to talk their language. And so this is going to be, as great as you were, this might be one of the most important conversations I have on Foresight TV all year long. So be sure and not miss that.
And Steve,